Hey yo, what is up? Alex here. Once again, we are live for the fourth time this week. We are covering a super important subject today, the pinnacle where all the magic happens. We're going to be talking about the in-depth workflow, how to get your stuff done, how to get that pro sound, a pro mix, really understand how to arrange tracks, how to edit tracks, how to get ideas together, all of that great stuff. And it is actually the fourth module in Music Creator Academy. We've been going through one module per video, and I will say it once again that Music Creator Academy is on sale for this week, an end of summer sale. It's at a really awesome price, and if you know that it's time to commit, to get serious, to really get some massive level up, to have somebody like myself in your corner, to have a bunch of other people on the same journey as you, in a community, working together, encouraging each other to make the best music you can. If you know something like that would be a great fit for you and you've been thinking about it for a while, I encourage you to check it out. Today is the last day, so if you're thinking about it, do not miss out. I will put the link above this video, so check it out. And today we're going to be talking about workflow. And one big thing that I want to say about workflow is that it is so important. And I'm not saying workflow in terms of knowing shortcuts and understanding how to do things a little bit quicker. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the process, the whole creative approach, the way you look at creating music and the way that you go about getting your track from the beginning to the end. And there is so much to say about it. I go super in depth. Like, this is a really crazy module in the course. It's packed full of value and so much info, so much demonstration, so much awesome stuff. But we're going to cover the foundations of it right now. So assuming that you have got a good understanding of your foundations, you've got a good understanding of the production. So you know how to navigate your DAW. You understand the message you're trying to create. You understand how sound works. You understand melody, rhythm, bass, dynamic. You figured that out. You got some ideas. You got some bags, you got some tricks in a bag. You got a bag of tricks of how to express yourself in those realms. You can create ideas to create a whole track now. You've mapped out a goal that makes sense to you. You have identified some limiting beliefs. You've kicked them to the side. You got a plan of action. You're consistent. You've been showing up for at least 10 minutes a day for a month. So you've been super consistent. You're starting to see progress. Now let's talk about the workflow. And one thing I want to say about workflow is that the way that you approach creating your art, the way that you approach making music, and the modality of your perspective throughout the different phases of production, because as a solo music producer, as an independent artist, as somebody who's wearing all the hats, you have a lot of different things you're doing. And it's super crucial to approach things in a proper order, and also for it to be flexible enough for you to create and to experiment with different workflows for different purposes, and something that keeps you engaged. And the more you're engaged with this process, the more you will see the result at the end of it. Because a lot of people seem to focus on the end result, which is important to get a really pro sound, a really pro sounding mix, to get a super specific genre down, to get something that's impactful. Those are all great goals. However, hyper focusing on the goal, sitting down at your studio and being I want to produce something that is revolutionary and amazing, that's going to blow minds. If you just hyper focus on that, it's going to not get you the result. It's actually going to hold you back. What you should be focused on is the process, meaning the steps, and your engagement with the steps is going to actually get you that result more than hyper focusing on the result. So let me elaborate. The process is the result. Okay, so developing your process and your workflow as a music producer, as a music maker, as a musician, as an artist is part of your art, and it is what is going to create the end result. So if we look at the process, there's many different things that you have to cover. You have to cover getting some sort of clarity on what type of song you're making, what type of track, what type of artist, what type of sounds are you going to experiment with, what type of instruments are you going to play around with. All of these things, you have to generate ideas. You have to then pick the best ideas, pick the ideas that are actually motivating to you, pick the ideas that stand above the rest. You have to arrange your songs. You have to make it an impactful experience, tell a story with the arrangement of your song that's not too cluttered, but also bring somebody on a journey that's impactful. You have to edit your performance. So you either have to retrack parts, you have to understand how to record audio, how to edit tracks, how to edit MIDI, how to chop up samples, whatever it is. You have to understand how to edit your performance to that pro level. Then once it's edited, you have to understand how to mix it and all of these things. So there's a lot to learn within workflow. However, if we zoom out, what you have to focus on is the order and the sequence of these phases. Because, for example, the first phase would be like how to start a session. And there's a million ways to start a session, and there's no one way to start a session. However, if you're intentional and you're clear on how you're going to start this particular session or how you're going to approach it for now, for a template, whatever it is, so long as you clarify certain things and set some sort of limitation, then you're good. So this would be like setting up your MIDI controllers so that you can express yourself and change the sound as you're playing things, right? Like add a delay, add a filter, go to a send track, whatever it is, whether you're using a certain type of guitar for a certain tone, whether you're using a certain type of vocal effect for some vocal stuff, right? Whether it's a certain BPM, whether you're working in a certain key, whether you're using a certain chord progression, whether you're just using an acoustic guitar. All of these things are super valid ways to start a session. However, you have to be clear on one of them to actually start a session, right? So let's say, for example, you set some limitations. You sound design maybe 2-3 sounds with some maps on your MIDI controller. You're going to use your guitar with this pedal, and you're going to work in, C# minor. Okay. So those limitations will actually enhance your creativity because they're not meant to be a box, but they're going to help you on your way. So that's the first step. Then you need a way to generate ideas. All right. And you need a way to get into flow. So I suggest that people develop a way to be playing an instrument, whether that's an actual like guitar, a piano, whether you're like a sax player, whether you play drums, or if you have a MIDI controller, a MIDI keyboard, whatever it is, I highly encourage you to develop some ability to play it so you can actually jam out ideas. All right, you don't have to jam out everything, but the more you can get your body involved in the process, the easier it's going to be to detach from the over-judgmental part of your mind and just engage and get into flow. All right, and that's actually the best time to be making ideas. And there's also a distinction between when you're flowing and creating ideas, it's not the best time to be editing ideas. It's not the best time to be judging your ideas or to be thinking, is this good enough? Should I change this sound? Because all of those things will get you out of flow. And that's what the next phase is for. It was just actually finding the best ideas from a bunch of ideas, right? And a lot of people kind of approach this the wrong way. And I used to do this for years where I would just endlessly work on an idea or ditch an idea till I get one really good idea and I refine it and I get it solid. However, that's a really slow approach as opposed to just having 30 ideas and then just picking the 3 or 4 best ones. You're going to make so much more progress, and it's going to be a judgment call from curation, meaning that you're choosing the best amongst a bunch of ideas. And just doing that will give you more perspective on what a good idea even is to you instead of hyper focusing on one idea. And this leads into the next track, the next phase, which is arranging a song. And a lot of people have trouble with arranging songs or composing stuff because they have a lack of ideas, because they don't have enough musical ideas to actually arrange a full song. And the way that you would avoid that is to have a lot more ideas than you plan to use. And you see how all these phases kind of link together, right? So the more you focus on clarifying your session, the easier it is. The easier it's going to be to get a bunch of ideas. The more ideas you have, the easier it's going to be to choose the best ones because you have a lot of ideas to choose from, and it's going to clarify which ideas are the best or which ideas fit your vision the most. The more that you have good ideas, the easier it's going to be to arrange your song because you're going to have plenty of good ideas to choose from, and you can just shape them, jam on them, refine them. And this is the key part of this workflow that we cover in the course, and that any workflow that I suggest you develop is that it's flexible enough to go back to a previous phase if needed. So let's say you're arranging your song and you feel like you don't have enough ideas or there's something missing, well, now you can take these good ideas you've established that you've worked out and you can go back and jam on them some more. You can go back and edit them if you want. You can change them up. You can create variations. You can see what happens and bring them back into the creative, jammy flow vibe and see what comes out, and then go back to trying to arrange your song. So if we continue forward, after that, the next phase is editing your song. So this is once your arrangement is finalized. And I highly encourage that you don't want to stick to this religiously. You don't want to be super boxed in by these phases. However, there is so many advantages to actually finalizing your arrangement, like being set on the structure of your song before you start editing it. And you can go back and forth, but in general, when you're editing a song and you're changing the ideas, you're programming stuff, you're maybe changing out sounds, you're retracking stuff, you're redoing whatever it may be to try and get the maximum top tier professional quality track you can through editing, you're going to want to have your song pretty much finalized. And then once you do the editing, which is probably the biggest part, the biggest phase, getting the edits right, meaning like if there's any questionable harmony, if there's any timing issues, if any of the sounds don't fit properly, maybe change them out. If anything has to be re-performed or retracked or anything of that nature, if you need to program in extra MIDI, add in some new tracks to layer new sounds, whatever it is, that's all underneath the editing umbrella. And then going from editing is mixing, then into master, okay? And when we get into mixing, I really invite you to think like a mixing engineer. And I know that these steps all interconnect when you're doing everything yourself, because you can be mixing as you go. Nothing wrong with that. However, when you really start to get to the point where like, yeah, I need to really get this mix done to get it to a point where I can release this on Spotify. I can share this and it's balanced. Everything sounds good amongst all your different speakers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I really encourage you that when you approach the mix, that you have signed off on the song being completed. Meaning that, for example, if you were to hire a mixing engineer, if you were to hire me to mix your song, for example, you would have to send me all of your tracks bounced down to audio. So all the MIDI, all the sounds, all the effects would have to be baked in to your tracks and balanced and finalized. That's the key, finalized before you start mixing. So I encourage you to do that. In the course, we dive into how to mix. Like I have a whole other framework about how to approach a mix and the best way to go about it, different frequencies, different sounds, what are the common mistakes, what's the best framework to get, what's the focus to have, a lot of detail, a lot of in-depth training and knowledge. And I show you how to do this with a song I actually make from front to back in the course. I'm not going to dive into that now just for the sake of length. But once you get to that phase, once you're mixing your song should be finalized arrangement wise. That's it. Now you're just focused on the sonic impact, the sonic quality, the final refinement to make it finalized. Once you get through the mix, maybe do a couple revisions, then it's time to master. And I am not a mastering engineer. I'm not a pro mastering engineer by any means. I know how to get a master done so that you could release it by yourself if you wanted to. However, I encourage you to find a mastering engineer if you can afford it, or if that's something you want to do. Otherwise, I show you how to go about a super simple way to get it there, to get it so that it sounds great and balanced. However, most of the work is done in the mixing phase. And another part of finishing this whole process is being able to call something finished, is being able to let go of your art and to restart the cycle, because you only really improve your skills once you go through the whole cycle, the whole workflow, all of the phases one after the other, and you finish something. Then you can say it's done and reflect on it in hindsight for the next time around. What will you do differently? What problems do you come across? And all of those things become valid once you finish something. And then the cycle continues. And this whole framework we went through is meant to be flexible enough for you to start adding things, for you to notice how you go about things better, for you to notice like what problems did you face. And this kind of ties back into your plan, is like as you go through this workflow, you're going to want to notice, where did you fall off? What part did you get discouraged? What problems did you come across? Could you do something better? What are you going to do differently, right? And get tasks, get some ideas going into your next session, right? Maybe you used the wrong key. Maybe you used the wrong instruments. Maybe you had not enough ideas before you got to the arrangement phase. Maybe you had too many ideas. You're going to use those ideas for the next track. So there's so many different ways, but the key is to have that review and go through the cycle as many times as possible. that was workflow in a nutshell. I hope that gives you some insights, and that's how I've learned over many years of trial and error.